but honestly, like, this was the moment I was, like, really nervous about. I knew I wanted to do architecture since, like, so long ago, and that's why I did the design discovery, and I just felt like it was the right moment for me to apply, and honestly, this really means so much to me.
Thank you so much again. It's been a while since I've been on social media, but last month has been overwhelming, exciting to say the least, because I can't believe I'm saying this, but I got into Harvard, Princeton, MIT, Columbia, and Cornell with full scholarship for Harvard and Princeton and half scholarship for the others. Honestly, I still can't believe this happened, and it honestly took a lot of time for me to process how I was able to do this, because I don't think I'm the most hardworking person out there. I may or may not be good at writing essays and conveying my intentions of why I want to attend these schools, but it's still really beyond me that I got into all of the schools that I applied to this year. So I wanted to take some time to look back and share my experience and potentially some tips that might help other people in their application process. First, I wanted to share the timeline of my applications. All the programs I applied to had deadlines in early January, which basically meant end of the year, December, because people have like New Year's off. There's always like technical difficulties. So I aimed to have my things done around December 30th, but obviously I was pretty late. I'll get into that later. So when did I know I wanted to apply to these programs? I would like to say 1 or 2 years before I actually did put in this application this year. When I graduated from Penn, I was thinking of applying to grad school immediately or working for a bit. And obviously I decided to be in consulting for a year or so just to get to know the industry, to see if this is really what I want. But ultimately, I knew I was going to apply for grad school, so it's been on the back burner for maybe the past 1 or 2 years. I actually started preparing my material maybe October or November of last year, which I think is pretty late, to be honest. I think when you start working and like hanging out with friends and doing things in the city, you're not really like in school in the mindset of, oh, I'm gonna prepare for my application, I'm gonna gather materials and do this and that. You kind of slack off a little bit. So it wasn't until late October, early November that it hit me. If I didn't start right now, I might miss this application cycle. So I started preparing the essays along with my portfolio in November. I've gotten some questions of, oh, how is it possible to do a whole portfolio in 1 or 2 months? I want to clarify that I didn't start my portfolio from scratch in November. In college, I took a lot of design courses and 1 or 2 architecture classes. I had all the projects more or less ready. Obviously, I was going to polish some of them and maybe make more models for a few of them, but in general, I had 70 to 80% of the portfolio ready. I just had to put it onto a PDF, figure out the layout, maybe update some of the blurbs and descriptions of them. So it wasn't entirely new. And then I had to ask for recs. Since it was pretty late, I was really nervous about asking for recs. I think I reached out early November, mid-November to 3 or 4 professors to ask for recs. It was a really tight timeline. They were really responsive. A lot of my design professors were really supportive. I met with one of the design professors mid-December after Thanksgiving break, with the applications due basically end of December. There were only 10 to 15 days, and I was honestly feeling a little bad at even asking. I just wanted to chat about the program and stuff, but he was so supportive. He was asking me, is there anything he can help with? And I was saying, I know 10 days is like a really short time. And he was like, what are you talking about? No worries. I will have that ready for you, which I felt so grateful for. And knowing that I had all these support from my professors, some friends, even some of my coworkers, I just knew I had to pull through and apply this cycle. So the whole month of December, I basically had no social life, which was a little miserable because that's when all the holiday things happen. People are having fun. You see people on Instagram going out every day. It's Christmas break. People have time off. They're traveling. And here I was in my room for a whole month, basically grinding on my portfolio and essays from morning to midnight every single day. Looking back, I think it was all worth it. I tend to be most productive closer to the deadline. I actually felt really motivated, and I just wanted to pull through and finish this portfolio and make it the best that I could. So even if I didn't get in, I knew I tried my best. First deadline was January 2nd. I actually kind of missed the deadline. It was due 11:59, and at 11:50, I was still exporting my portfolio. And of course, my laptop crashes. My head just goes blank. Thankfully, I emailed the application people, and they were so nice. They told me it was fine. I could just email my portfolio to them and they would upload it, since I was done with every other part of the application. After that, there were a couple deadlines on the 3rd, the 4th. Every day it was until 11 p.m., which looking back was a horrible decision. I think I just tend to procrastinate until the very last second. I knew I tried my best in the essay portion. The portfolio probably could have been better if I had more time, but decided to just shut my laptop and not think about this for the next 2 or 3 months. It wasn't until early March when I heard back from the first school, which was Cornell. I woke up to an email that said congrats. Immediately, I was so happy. I logged in. It was Cornell's acceptance letter. Dean also called my phone number to let me know that I got in and say congrats. For Cornell, I got half scholarship. The program was 3.5 years. I think the next one that came in was actually Harvard. I was actually asleep when the chair of architecture tried to call me. He texted me letting me know I should give him a call back. By that time, I was 80% sure I got in, because I don't think you would call people to let them know that they were rejected. I was really nervous, extremely nervous. I called him back, and of course he says, congrats, got in, and I was so overwhelmed and excited. And he told me that they decided to give me the dean's scholarship, which meant it covered my tuition for all 3.5 years of the program, which was honestly so unbelievable for me. I was just so overwhelmed with what he told me, but I was so happy, because this was one of the programs that I've been looking into for the longest time, and it was my dream program to get into. After that, I went on a short travel and honestly kind of forgot about the other schools. From the beginning, I knew Harvard was the program I wanted to go to, and I've been preparing for that since day one. I felt like I've achieved my goal. What actually did surprise me is a couple days later, Princeton sent me an email and told me I got in. Previously, I never really thought of getting into Princeton. In my mind, it was like a really elite academia-oriented school. From what I heard, every year they only take in 18 students for architecture. So I had my hopes pretty low. Honestly, I just applied for fun because I already had the portfolio and essay. It really did shock me that I got into Princeton with full scholarship. I'm still in the decision-making process, so I'm not really sure which one I'm going to yet. Overall, I'm very overwhelmed, and I'm so grateful that I got into all of these programs, even have the luxury of choosing between these programs and not having to care about the financial aspect, which I'm so grateful for these schools, and seeing maybe the potential I have being able to offer full scholarship so I don't have to choose based on financial constraints. That was my basic timeline of applying and getting notification of my acceptances. Moving on, I wanted to give some advice to people who are going through the application process, whether that is out of high school, out of undergrad, or even out of grad school, going into PhDs. I feel like these are advice that can be applied to any stage of the application process. I think it has worked well for me and people I've spoken with and helped in the past. The first thing is to be clear on what you want and prepare early for that. Personal experience, I from the beginning knew I wanted to go to Harvard GSD because I went to their summer school when I was like 16 and it really left a really deep mark on me. So I always wanted to go back. Leading up to that, I started preparing early, not just the application materials, but attending a lot of their seminars, getting to know what types of projects they prefer. They have open houses every year. You can see the portfolios of admitted students. from that, you can kind of see what they like. Do they like more technical architectural software skills, or do they like more experimental projects that might not be in the realm of architecture but shows some type of logical thinking behind it? I also attended their design discovery program, which is a summer program where you get to work with grad students at Harvard, learn about architecture, landscape, urban planning, get to know the school and program more, and also develop some projects that you can use in the portfolio. The second point is to get to know the schools that you're applying to. I feel like a lot of people, they might generalize their application a lot. Obviously, I also did a general essay that I use for all the schools. There are slight differences between what schools want from applicants, and it's very important to know those differences and tailor towards them. So for example, the Harvard program and Princeton program, they're all very prestigious, but from my understanding, they prefer slightly different types of people. Princeton, a lot of the people are very academia oriented, so they do want to go into teaching afterwards. There are obviously also people going into practice, but speaking with current students and attending the open houses, I know history and theory is really heavy in the curriculum. They look for people who are developing their own skills in that realm and potentially having teaching as like a future option. Like they're more theory based, and in my essay I did write more about architecture history that I know of in a more theoretical way. Whereas for Harvard and MIT, I feel like they value more innovation and experimental thoughts. For them, I talk more about the interdisciplinary applications of architecture, since the skills you learn in architecture school can also be applied in a lot of different fields like engineering and design and biofabrication. So I talked more about how design and architecture can be applied in different contexts. My third tip is just to be genuine and show your passion. These schools read thousands of applications. They know if your application is going through a certain formula, talking about your achievements and where you want to go. They can tell if you have real passion behind it. For example, all the schools obviously asked, oh, why architecture? My first draft was very generic. It was talking about climate factors, sustainability, and all of those things that are quote-unquote hot topics in the field of architecture now. As I was rewriting them, I felt like I wanted to put more of a personal touch to it. All the essays ended up being very personal for me. I had personal anecdotes of specific moments that I fell in love with architecture and how architecture affected how I interact with the built environment and how I perceive human interactions in a built space. In the end, I felt like my essay was not very traditional in a sense that it followed a couple paragraphs, it talked about the schools and programs, but it was more of who I am, and I think the schools saw that I had a genuine passion for architecture. So those were all the things I wanted to talk about today. I was planning to make another video of why I decided to quit consulting and go into architecture, since it's a objectively higher workload and lower paying job. That's all for now, and thanks for tuning in.